Well, hello, everyone. This is a re-recording of our April 8th workshop on the NSF, SBIR, and STTR programs and the upcoming NSF ACSA cohort. The recording didn't save, so we're redoing it today, but we're going to be covering all of the information that we would have, or that we did on the April 8th. So first of all, welcome and thank you for joining. This presentation is really going to seek to give you an introduction into NSF and their SBIR and STTR programs. So we're going to kind of just really briefly cover what are the SBIR and STTR programs, why are they important for businesses to know about, what is NSF's focus under the SBIR and STTR programs, kind of what are their mechanics, and why should you potentially be interested in joining our upcoming cohort. So real quickly, the SBIR and STTR programs are essentially a way for the government to inject research and development dollars into small businesses. They're designed and set up so that if you have an innovative idea that has some commercial potential, that you go, man, if only I can make a product out of this, this would be great. People would love it. And it's a way to offset the cost because research and development is expensive. Launching a product is expensive, particularly if you don't know if it's even going to work. Well, that's where these programs come in. They're a great way to just drive the innovative ecosystem across America. Now, one quick little aside is, under the SBIR program, there's actually 11 federal agencies that participate, 12 departments. Department of Commerce splits theirs between NIST and NOAA. And the STTR program is a sister program to SBIR. Out of those 12 departments, 5 of them participate in the STTR, but that's because the original impetus for STTR was to take technologies that were essentially sitting on the shelf at research institutions. People figured out really great research, they figured out really great things, they may be protected, but universities and federal research and development centers aren't really set up to create a product out of it. So it just kind of sits there. And this was a way for businesses to take those ideas and turn them into a product. That's not really the entire focus of STTR anymore. There is still the opportunity there, but the real big difference between SBIR and STTR is that the STTR program requires you to be researching with or working with a research institution. You have to have one of those on the team. Whereas on the SBIR, if you have the wherewithal, the expertise, the experience, you can just solo it yourself. So one of the questions people often ask is, well, why would I be interested in these programs? Why should I pursue them? What does it mean for me? What does it do for me? And besides being able to offset research and development, there's some really great things that the SBIR and STTR programs bring to bear for businesses. So the SBIR and STTR programs are what's known as the government seed fund. And it's not really a misnomer there because in essence, it is a seed fund. It is an investment into the company. But unlike other types of investments, the SBIR and STTR programs are equity-free investments. You don't have to pay them back. You don't have to give up part of your idea. You don't have to give up part of your company. You don't have to worry about, well, now I have these shareholders. They want me to do this. They want me to do that. These programs are a way for you to grow, for you to hire more people, for you to sell more products, for you to create more jobs, because that's really what the government's interested in. They're interested in companies actually succeeding. They're interested in companies being able to move forward, be a commercial success, be a market, leader in whatever they're trying to bring to bear. So you don't have to have collateral. It's not a loan. You don't have to pay it back. It's really just a way to set yourself up for success in the future. And one of the other kind of metrics for success in the future that's really interesting that these programs bring to bear is It allows you to actually be set up for sole source contracting. So with what you create, if someone like Department of Defense or NASA really likes the product and they go, we need these, we're going to buy them. With this type of funding, because it is federal dollars that have been put into the product already, then DoD and NASA or any of the other agencies can just come to you and buy it from you. They can set up a contract. They don't have to go through an open competition. You're not competing with the Raytheons and Lockheeds because they have something that might be similar that they can tailor. It's a really great vehicle just to secure those levels of funding, secure those levels of growth, and secure those levels of development that you need.
Dell, a couple of other reasons why I think SBIR STTR is a great avenue for small companies. One is credibility. And you walk into an investor's office and say, "Hey, I'm interested in getting some money for my new innovative product," and they don't know who you are. They don't know if you're crazy. They don't know if you're a snake oil salesman. But if you come in and say, "Well, I'm a previous SBIR winner," it's suddenly, "Oh, well, then you've been vetted through a system of not just the federal government, but in many cases outside reviewers who have looked at you, looked at your technology, your innovation, and concluded you are for real and you have ideas that are worthy of consideration." So it helps with credibility, number one. Number two, when you're sitting there talking to that investor and you just have an idea and you have no idea whether that idea is going to work, it could fall flat on its face. That's risky. So what does the investor do when you're presenting them a very risky proposition? Well, first of all, they probably throw you out. But if they don't throw you out, they will say, "Okay, I want a big chunk of your company in return for the risk that I have to assume that your idea doesn't work." Well, SBIR takes that technical risk off the table. So when you're sitting there talking to the VC, you say, "Look, it works. I've proven it. I've got a working prototype. Let me demonstrate it. Now let's talk about an investment in which I will reward you, investor, for assuming risk on the commercialization side of the project. Will it be a success in the marketplace or not?" So you'll pay a much lower price for equity capital if you go through SBIR as TTR first. And finally, commercialization. People, I think, really underestimate the importance of this. But if you get a grant, let's say you just get a government grant to do some research, what do you get? You get a year, let's say, worth of grant money to go do something. And when the year is up, the money's gone. What do you got to do? Got to go get more grant money. And you just are on this gerbil wheel of getting grant funds. SBIR STTR, if you use it wisely, gives you the opportunity to do the R&D with that grant and then take it to the marketplace. Start selling it in the marketplace, maybe you directly, maybe through someone that you license it to. What does that do? That generates long-term revenue. You start building a business, a sustainable business, because you got long-term revenue coming from the commercialization. So I agree with everything that Dell's got on this slide. Plus, I think there are other important reasons why you should consider SBIR or STTR.
Yeah, and those are some really great points, Jim. I really like the one about belaying technical risk because it's kind of a twofold thing. It is really great when you go out there and seek outside funding, but then also it's a really important part of any of the proposal packages because you have to demonstrate that there is a technical risk. You have to demonstrate that if I went out there and I tried to get a venture capitalist to invest in me right now, I'm going to have to give up complete control. This is not good for the future of my business. And that's what they're interested in. They're interested in those mechanisms where they can say, we made a difference. We made this happen. Here's how we made this happen. Because it's going to be, they have to answer to Congress eventually, and they have to show that, yes, we helped stand up, it sounds corny, but the future of America through investments into these businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to emphasize, and you're going to hear from us again, guys, later on, but notice what Dell said. They want risk. They want technical risk. The federal agencies want to see a project with technical risk in it. So this is different than dealing with a lot of other types of investors or funding sources where they want you to prove that you know that it's going to work. It's exactly the opposite in SBIR, STTR. They actually want to see that there is technical risk that jeopardizes the project, and therefore you need SBIR STTR funding to fill that need. So keep that in the back of your heads, because it's an incredibly important part of the SBIR STTR programs. And I see people all the time who obviously don't get that because they write proposals about how everything is known, how everything is going to work, how it's a slam dunk. And that is not what people fund in SBIR.
That's a great point. And just to kind of wrap that around to something that is coming up is Jim's absolutely correct. You have to show that there's not a great path forward. You know the path forward, but there's all sorts of potholes. There's all sorts of, pitfalls. There's all sorts of roadblocks. Here's how I'm going to, try and get across those. But at the heart of it, that's really what at least NSF is interested in, because if you can't show that this is revolutionary, and revolutionary means a gigantic change, it means a shift in the foundation, and that kind of stuff is risky. But a little sneak peek of something coming ahead.
Yes.
So a couple of really quick last slides here about just the overall programs. So as I mentioned, there's 11 different agencies that participate in the SBIR program. One of these is split into two. That's why it's 12 departments. And the ones that are in gray are the STTR agencies, but remember, they also participate in SBIR. There's some foundational differences with some of these on how they approach STTR versus SBIR, but for most of them, it's essentially a carbon copy. It is a way for you to actually provide more funding to a research institution if you need a lot of technical work that you just can't undertake on your own. But when you're thinking about the agencies and which one to approach, kind of something to keep in mind is that one of the things we often like to tell people is there's not one SBIR program. Essentially, there's 12, because the differences between the agencies can be so vast, and even differences within an agency, like DoD and their different service components. Your amount of your level of funding can change, your period of performance can change. It can even change what's required in your proposal package. And between the agencies, it's kind of a Wild West show on when are they open, how do you contact people, what is the funding vehicle, whether it's a grant or whether it's a contract, where grants are typically more open, contracts are more a solution based, so somebody has a problem. And one thing to just realize is these differences are kind of key, because agencies have their own mission and focus. Agencies have their own kind of criteria. Agencies have their own research wheelhouse, and they use their SBIR and STTR programs in that same manner. So before you approach these programs, it's a really great idea to understand what that agency is about, what they have for maybe a 10-year plan, what they do, what they look at, and kind of go out there and look at things like their publications. How do they speak about innovation? How do they speak about, products? How do they speak about commercial? How do they speak about, various aspects that are going to be important as you get ready to launch a product? Because their SBIR and STTR programs are really going to be just bathed in their own culture and their own norms, how they approach it, how they look at these programs, how they want to utilize these programs within their own agency and within their own wheelhouse. So we kind of hinted at it before, but one of the last things I want to leave you with, because it's going to tie directly into when we talk about NSF, is there are two, let's call them clarion criteria with the SBIR and STTR programs, two things that just really form the backbone: innovation. So innovation, a lot of times people get it wrong. They think that innovation is, oh, well, this looks like it fell out of an episode of Star Trek. This is, super high tech. This is super unique. This is super revolutionary. And while, yes, a lot of times stuff like that is innovative, it's not the sum total of innovation. Low level tech or low tech stuff can also be innovative. A really great example of this is DoD actually funded an SBIR awardee to create comic books for PTSD patients. Comic books aren't high tech. Don't get me wrong, I love comic books. I'm a nerd, but they're very low tech. They've been around for, essentially centuries. There has been some form of media where we look at pictures and we understand them. But somebody said, I could do that for PTSD patients. I could actually show them how to transition back. I can show them, how to kind of defeat their demons. I can show them that it's okay, that they will get there. And somebody said, well, let's take the low tech approach. Let's actually put them in situations. Let's show them how they interact again in normal life. And DoD said, that sounds great. That's innovative. We haven't tried that approach. And so they were funded, because at the heart of it, that's what innovation is. It is an approach that is different. It's an approach that is unique. It's using a lot of times technology. It doesn't have to be high tech, but using different resources, using different approaches, using different methodologies to get a better result for less resource cost. That's kind of innovation at the heart of it. And that resource cost is important because that really does lead to commercialization. So people buy solutions because it addresses a pain point they have. People buy solutions because it addresses a need they have. People buy solutions because it allows them to do their job more effectively, or it allows them to not spend as much to solve a problem. And that's the second, kind of clarion call that these programs have, is commercialization. There has to be a pathway forward. There has to be somebody that's going to buy this. There has to actually be a market for this. There has to be an unmet need that you're addressing for it to be considered commercial worthy. Because these agencies aren't going to just dump money into an idea that's already been seen, already old hat, and nobody's going to buy it. Because what does that do for your business? Well, really doesn't do anything. Yeah, you got funding, but you launched a product that nobody wants. What's the purpose in that? Remember, these are kind of an investment. The government wants you to grow. They want you to be a successful business. You can't be a successful business off of spinning out things that other people have already created, and that aren't different, that don't answer a new need, that don't answer a unmet pain point that's out there.
Del, I get one of the most common criticisms I hear of SBIR is innovation and commercialization. You can't do that. I mean, those are contradictory ideas. I don't think so. And we have a real good current example, and that's the vaccine. Innovation, look at all the work that has gone into developing a vaccine in a time frame that's unheard of in history. That's innovation. Is there any commercialization involved? What did I see this morning? I think we've got 174,000 doses out now of the vaccine. And that's just in the United States, guys. Imagine third world countries and the rest of the world as it begins to unravel and fold into other parts of the world. Commercialization, darn tootin'. Innovation, yeah. So sometimes these do go together. Now, there are instances where it's innovative and frankly, nobody gives a dang. So there's no commercialization opportunity. It's an interesting nuance and fun to explore, but there's no commercialization. Well, that's not SBIR. There are other instances where it's really pretty boring and straightforward and everybody knows it's going to work, but it's going to sell like hotcakes. Again, that's not SBIR. So you got to have both. You got to have a really innovative idea, risk of failure, but also if it does take off and it does work, the commercialization opportunity is tremendous for you, and also the social benefit is there.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head with that one, Jim. Is I have, heard that same thing about that break between innovation and commercialization. And I never really understand that, because most new products that hit the market, most things that are commercial success, are different in some way. There's something that people, maybe they didn't even know they needed. Maybe it's, I'm selling ice to Eskimos kind of, sales pitches behind them. But for most things that are new, that hit the market, that are different, that people go, oh, wow, I've never seen this. You got to buy one of these. It's innovative. There's an entirely different way they've approached it. May seem like a very weird example to throw out there. And it wasn't SBIR or funding, but to show that match between innovation and commercialization, you look at something like the Nintendo Wii. Video game systems have been out there. Obviously, people are going to buy the games. There's, commercial potential out there. And it was one of the, at least that generation, the highest selling consoles. But it allowed people to interact with the medium in a way that nobody had ever done before. That's why you had grandmas playing, Wii bowling, because it was something that everybody could get their hands on, everybody could understand. And it was so unique and nothing that was out there before. And so when you marry innovation to commercialization, personally, I think that's where you see the best commercial successes, as you see the most growth, you see the best pathway, you see the most revenues, because again, you're doing something that nobody else has, and you're showing people why they didn't even know they needed that. So switching just slightly, now that we've given you an introduction into SBIR and STTR, well, what does that mean for NSF? How do they look at it? So remember the clarion calls, innovation and commercialization. So NSF is very big into both of those because that's the backbone and the hallmark of these programs. But innovation can be defined differently at different agencies. So one thing that NSF is really great at is NSF doesn't really define what is innovative. NSF does define very strictly what is not innovative. So NSF is interested in things that they call revolutionary, things that are not seen out there, things that change our understanding of the way science works, things that have, profound societal impacts. That's what they consider innovative, which is kind of the, standard definition of innovative. But NSF is very strict when they look at what's not innovative. So things that are maybe incremental improvements, maybe you didn't kick the field goal, but you moved the ball, 2 yards closer. That's not innovative. Things that are evolutionary enhancements, where you're creating something and somebody looks at it and goes, oh, well, yeah, of course, that's the next place you would take that. That's an evolutionary enhancement. That's not innovative to NSF. Or things that are straightforward engineering problems. You go, I have this thing, I know it'll work, I know it does this, it just needs to be slightly retooled. Well, that's engineering. That's not research. So remember, NSF are science geeks. That's science is in their, oh, sorry, John.
Excuse me, Dan. This is a good example where the agencies differ. And let me just talk about Department of Agriculture for a minute. USDA says, boy, if you got something that right now works in an urban or suburban setting that might benefit people that live in a rural area, but you don't know whether it's going to work or not, we'd fund that. Now, you look at what NSF says, that sounds awfully evolutionary to me. It sounds awfully like just incremental improvements over existing technology. NSF would probably turn their nose up on that. But USDA opens their arms and says, we're worried about rural America, people living in rural America, and you got something working in urban or suburban America that might help those that live in rural areas, we want to fund it. So you got to really pay attention to your agency and what they are interested in. And the word that Dell has given you here is the key word to keep in mind as you deal with NSF, revolutionary. That's the term they use, revolutionary. You need to be clear that your idea is revolutionary and you can argue and convince others that it's revolutionary.
That USDA example is a really great one, Jim. I'd like to throw another example out there that kind of speaks to that difference is, like Department of Defense. So Department of Defense has their topics. They know exactly what they're looking for. They know the kind of solutions they need. They just don't have time to dump money into figuring out those solutions. So when they put out their solicitation, it is very structured around, this is the problem we have, this is how it needs to be solved, this is how it needs to be addressed. To me, what comes out of it is innovative, but that entire process really isn't innovative. It's a work plan. They know what they need. They know how to solve it. They know the time period they're going to give you. Heck, DoD even gives you the objectives that they want you to hit during phase 1 and phase 2. So it's not really innovation. It's a contract, and that's because it is a contract. So as Jim said, knowing how these agencies approach their programs, knowing how they address the difference between their research focus or their research area or just their mission and their statement, knowing that difference for how they want to provide funding, what they think is innovative, is going to be really key. Even if you don't go after NSF, if you go after a different agency, you're going to have to know those things, because it's going to change how you're going to approach that agency, what you're going to write, how you're going to write about it, what you're going to focus on. That leads to a strong and compelling proposal. And those requirements for strong and compelling proposals can be vastly different between each agency. But the really good thing about NSF is, even though they define what's not innovative, they don't define what area of science you have to be working in. They don't define what area of research. NSF is science. It's all about science. It's all about discovery. It's all about, putting forward the changing face of what we know and understand about our universe. So NSF really looks at everything. With NSF, you just have to meet their definitions of innovation and commercialization. You don't have to be working in, geology. You don't have to be working in the hard sciences. You could be working in social sciences. You could be working in digital ledgers. You could be working in health. You could be working in mathematics. As long as it is innovative, and by that they mean revolutionary, not unseen, unique, not being currently met, not being addressed, and as long as there's commercial potential, they'll probably fund it. And people go, well, how do you know that for a fact? Two really great examples here on this slide. Two currently funded SBIR, or phase 2s under NSF. One is somebody's redesigning the wheel for agriculture systems, those big, combine circle sprayers you see out there in the fields. Somebody said, those wheels that we put on them, they're not effective. They get bogged down, it misses spots, that leads to water waste. And somebody said, I could redesign the wheel for that. I could make a better drive system. I could, change the way that we think about what is a wheel to us. And NSF said, that sounds great. Let's go ahead and fund that. Another one here, which I always love talking about, is a current funded phase 2 project under NSF is an IoT-enabled smart shower head for hotels. And people go, well, wait, what? Yes, NSF funded a project to actually be able to replace the shower heads in hotels with IoT-enabled smart devices that would monitor water flow, monitor density, and just make sure that there wasn't water wastage. People weren't just leaving them on, and that they could be remotely shut off. NSF said, well, that's got commercial viability. Nobody's doing that. That sounds innovative and revolutionary. Let's go ahead and fund that. So these two examples really just show that for NSF, it doesn't matter what you're working in. It doesn't matter what you're working on. It doesn't matter the area of science. As long as it is innovative and as long as it has commercial potential, there's a potential pathway there for you through NSF funding. And one thing that's kind of really interesting and important, I think, to note with NSF is people often go, well, these programs aren't for me. I don't have an LLC. I just barely started my company. I haven't been in business, for 10 years. For NSF, they don't care about that. In 2017, 59% of the awardees were less than 3 years old. So you don't have to have a long history of doing business. You don't have to have a long history of operations. You don't have to be an S Corp or, a public partnership or whatever type of, vehicle you think you have to be an actual business. You can even be a sole proprietor. As long as you show you have the expertise and the wherewithal to get the project done so that their investment doesn't go just doesn't go nowhere. NSF says, this is great. This is how we're going to affect the state of innovation. This is how we're going to affect the ecosystem. We're going to help stand up these new companies that have no experience, or not no experience. Let me take that back. Have no long history of operations, but they have it. They have the experience. They have the expertise. They have the wherewithal. As long as you can convince them that you have a pathway forward, you know the pathway, and you have the people, or at least know where to get the people to move forward, NSF says, that sounds great to us.
Yeah, NSF likes to fund the new and early stage businesses. And part of that goes back to what Dale told you a while ago about this being a seed fund, SBIR, STTR being a seed fund. NSF, at least some of the program officers at NSF, think seed means seeding small businesses, seeding new businesses. So they like to use their SBIR, STTR money in those companies that are new. Now, what is new? Well, that's a difference of opinion, but the point is, the older you are as a company, the longer you've been in R&D and commercialization of technology and so on, the less NSF thinks you're a candidate for SBIR, STTR. I don't really agree with that approach. I just want you to know what NSF feels about the age of the business that applies.
I think it really gets to one of the things that we talked about earlier, Jim, was that, risk. There has to be that risk. There has to be that if I tried to undertake this project, it would crush me. Mm-hmm. And I can kind of see where some of those program managers are coming from. If you're a company that's been in operation for 10 or 20 years, you have your revenue lines, you have, your established protocols, you have your investors, you have, maybe you're an IPO and, or went through an IPO and you're already publicly listed. You have resources you could tap into. Yeah, it may put a strain on your business, but it's not ultimately going to crush it. But for those new companies, they don't have that backbone. They don't have that, foundation where they can go, well, I can pull from this, I can pull from that. We have these revenues coming in. We can do this research. For new companies, maybe it means that they're standing out on the street corner with their saxophone every Friday night, trying to make $5 or $10 at a time busking. But I can see that kind of change in the modality, or that shift in mentality about, no, we have to help stand up these new businesses because they don't have the resources and they don't have the way to get around risk that older and larger companies do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting point. I'm still concerned about them, but I like your point, Dale.
Now NSF doesn't pay me, so I don't know if that's what they're thinking of, but I could see them.
I'm an NSF reviewer. I'm an NSF reviewer, and they do pay me.
So when you think about NSF, we talked earlier about the agency differences and how it means that they, accept proposals at different times. They release proposals, or they release solicitations at different times. They have different mechanisms for actually getting them a proposal. So NSF operates under submission windows now. They're quarterly submission windows. The weird thing about the quarterly submission windows for NSF is it lasts the entire quarter. So as you see here, you have the current window we're in, which opened March 5th and closes June 3rd. Guess when that next window opens? June 4th. So there's never a point that they're not accepting proposals. That's why the people always say, well, NSF is always open, which to a point is true, but they have a methodology for actually getting into them first. They have a really kind of strict way for how you submit a proposal to them. They have a strict way for how do we approach this. And we're going to talk about that actually shortly here, but just to kind of reinforce one of the points we made earlier, is NSF is really focused on technical challenges. So again, there has to be that compelling and just overarching need of why do we need this type of funding? Why is this the only path forward available to us? Why would we be crushed if we tried to do this ourselves? Why was this something that is just foolhardy for us to, try and take on? What is it that is really challenging about what we're doing? Because those challenges, they're challenges because there's risk involved. So think about the risk to what you're creating. Think about how it could kind of just all fall apart. Think about how it's this, wobbly house of cards. And those ways that it is, those are challenges you have to overcome. So anything that's just a business challenge of, well, I can't get funding for this, that's not a technical challenge. So when you're thinking about approaching NSF, dive down into where are those risks being generated? Where do they come from? What is that problem that has to be solved? Because ultimately NSF wants you to be solving a problem. They want you to be solving a gigantic issue. You don't have to get all the way there during the phase one. In fact, in a phase one, you're just trying to establish that feasibility, establish that there is a hope and a prayer here, establish that I have some confidence interval saying that if I had more funding, if I had more money, if I actually dove down into solving this problem, then I can create this solution. You're not trying to solve it the first go around. You're just trying to show that there is a pathway to solve it in the future. And this is the pathway that you need to take. And to figure out that pathway, you're going to do some research. You're going to do some development. And that's what NSF is looking for in that phase one. What is that challenge that you're really going to kind of take apart and see how it works, see what's under the hood, just dissect it until you go, okay, I completely understand this now. Now I know exactly how I need to approach this and exactly what I need to do.
I want to, Del, clarify, because I think some people may say, oh, so phase one, I just have to lay out kind of a path of how I'm going to do this. And that wouldn't be correct. You do in phase one need to, as Del has on the slide here, prove the feasibility. So you got to show that the underlying idea and the risk that you are facing right now is resolved. You can get by that. Now, you don't have it all figured out. You don't have all the pieces together. But if there are, let's say, 4 different technical risks in your idea, take the one that if you can't overcome that risk, the other 3 don't matter. Address that one risk in phase one, focus on that one, and then show the path forward in phase 3 to address the other issues if you can overcome that risk. If you can't overcome that risk, you've proven the infeasibility of your idea, and basically your project ends at that point. But just want to make sure folks aren't thinking we're just talking, when we talk pathway, it's not just a plan. It needs to be in phase one, you've reached some conclusion about feasibility.
That's a really great clarification there, Jim. And then for NSF, you also have to be able to show that there's going to be some impacts. So obviously there's going to be some commercial impacts, because remember, you have to have commercial potential. You have to be able to commercialize this in some fashion. But outside of, that huge commercial impact, what other impacts are going to happen by you launching this product? What are those essentially broader societal impacts? How many lives are going to be potentially saved? How many people's lives and our quality of health is going to be improved? How many, people are going to be able to go home quicker to their son and play catch at night now? Whatever that impact is, whatever you're moving forward, whatever you're showing that this is not just about me being able to be successful and make money. Because yes, that impacts you, that impacts your business, but there has to be something else that happens. You have to be able to show what you're going to do and how it's going to change the face of how we interact with, whatever it is you're creating, how we understand the fundamental science from it. How are you breaking the mold so hard that everybody pays attention and goes, holy crap, I didn't think we could even do that. That is the type of impacts that NSF is looking for. You're not turning the world upside down for free, though. still making money. You don't have to go, this is going to be the greatest societal impact and I'm going to give this away for free. Well, then there's not commercial potential there. So you shot yourself in the foot and you're probably not going to get funding. They have to know that the money is going to do good. So what kind of good is that money going to do?
You're going to make the world a better place. You're going to do that through commercializing your innovation. And that's how you're going to continue to provide that solution to this problem, is through commercialization, because you're being paid for your efforts, for your materials, for your labor, for your all the things that go into commercialization. That's not only your reward, but it's also what keeps you continuing to provide this solution to a problem.
Yeah. Think that Daft Punk song, bigger, faster, stronger. How are you going to be bigger, faster, stronger? So before we talk about the actual mechanisms for getting in touch with NSF, starting that process, just something that people are always interested in. Well, what's the funding levels like? So under a phase one on an SBIR, actually, and an STTR, NSF considers these almost carbon copies of each other. Again, the only difference is on an STTR, you have to be working with a research institution. So in your phase one, it's 12 months and $256,000 worth of funding. And, people often go, well, I'm not going to be successful off of that amount of money. I need more. Well, and that's probably true. Remember, as we just said, and as Jim underscored and highlighted, you're trying to solve a problem during phase one. You're trying to establish that feasibility. You're just trying to show that now I know this, now I've understood this, now I've shown that this actually can work. I need to go out there and make it work. And that's why you're phase two. That's what you do. You go out there and you make it work. You start to put together that market ready prototype, that thing that you can just stamp out, that thing where you go, well, here's how this works. Here's how I do it. Here's how I go forward with this. That thing where that's not held together by baling wire and duct tape and a lot of thoughts and prayers. That thing where you go, okay, well, now I can make a product. Now I can produce this. Now I can get it on store shelves. And that's why your phase two is, longer, 24 months, and a good chunk more money, $1 million. Phase two does have some supplemental and some supplemental funding that's available, but it does require third-party investment. So don't kind of count on it. Think of it as, here's my phase one, here's my phase two, here's how much money I can get to actually create a product out of this. And one thing to kind of note too, one of the things that people often kind of get confused on as another difference between SBIR and STTR, when it comes to NSF is, so NSF out of the 5 STTR agencies is still the only agency that requires the PI to be primarily employed by the small business. Other ones allow the PI to actually come from the research institution. But when you're thinking of, well, how much money does the research institution need? So under an SBIR, the business can do all of the work. SBIR deals in maximums. So it's a maximum amount of 33% to the subaward. And it's all subawards. So it's not 33% to this one, 33% to that one. It's a sum total. If you have 4 subs that are working for you, they're splitting a 33% pot. So kind of keep that in mind. And it's not just about the money, though. It's also about the work. So that is your maximum. Now, STTR deals in minimums. So it's a minimum of 40% to the business, a minimum of 30% to the business. And anybody who graduated 5th grade math knows, well, that doesn't equal 100%. Well, that's true. It doesn't. That other 30% can be split how it needs. If more needs to go to the business, if more needs to go to the research institution because the technical problem is so just out of this world and something that you wouldn't be able to solve, that they need to do more of the work and get more of the funding, or if you need to bring in other partners. partners, other collaborators. It allows you to do that. And so that's why we say that the SBIR program is a maximum-based program and the STTR program is a minimum-based program, because that's really what it is when you look at that split.
But let me emphasize again, because I get so many people that are confused about this. If you're teaming with university or federal laboratory, other nonprofit, you can apply to either SBIR or STTR. Okay, so if you're involving a research partner that's a nonprofit, typically university, but could also be a federal laboratory like Sandy or Los Alamos, you can do either STTR or SBIR. If you don't have the nonprofit, you don't have the university, then you're restricted to SBIR. But I get so many people that think, oh, I'm teaming with New Mexico State, so I have to do STTR. Dead wrong. As Dell's telling you, you can sub a third of a phase 1 SBIR, and you could sub to pretty much anyone or anything, large industry, small companies, individual consultants, and universities and federal laboratories in SBIR. STTR, you got to have a nonprofit like a university or federal lab involved. So just look at it that way. If your project, as you're envisioning it, is going to involve the university or federal lab, then you can be looking at both SBIR, STTR. But if you are going at it alone, or it's you with say a for-profit subsidiary, not a subsidiary, a sub-awardee, then you're going to be restricted to SBIR.
Yeah, great point, John. So how do you get started with NSF? We've given you a lot of information. A lot of your palettes are probably wetted now. You're going, NSF sounds really great. I need to start working on a proposal package. Well, put the brakes on, because NSF requires a project pitch. So that was the other change that NSF did when they switched to quarterly windows, is now you have to put together a project pitch. You have to put together kind of a high-level overview or introduction into what you're working on. The project pitch was created, NSF says it was created twofold, and at the heart of it, it was time and effort savings. Time and effort so that NSF didn't have to, sort through a bunch of proposals that just didn't match their criteria for what was innovative, what had commercial potential, what might be able to make it. And time and effort for businesses so that you're not creating a great big proposal package on something that NSF would just never fund, that they would never be interested in. So that's why they drove towards this project pitch. One thing to keep in mind, even for the project pitch itself, we're going to talk really shortly here about the actual mechanics of the project pitch. But in both the project pitch and the full proposal that you create after you get an accepted pitch, and again, don't start creating one until you have an accepted pitch. You do not know how you're going to have to change it so that it matches NSF's criteria, is both of those are going to be a very strange operation for many people, because it is at the heart of it this weirdest mix between a research project and a business plan. Remember, NSF is interested in things that are revolutionary. There has to be some actual research. There has to be some aspect of innovation that you go, man, I really got to take this apart. I got to understand more. I got to research about this. I have to, pull these, 2 nanotubes apart and study the structure in it, and maybe make some material science and figure out how to create this lighter than air thing. But it's also a business plan, because you have to show that not only do you have the researchers that have expertise in that area of science, you have to show that your people have wherewithal, that you have a company that can actually thrive, that you have something that can be put together. And again, that you have that potential to sell this. You know what that's going to take. You know what that market's going to look like. You know who that customer is, or you have a really great idea about who that customer is and about how you prove that out and about what the value proposition is for them. So it's going to be this kind of back and forth and interplay. And really, it's about applied research. So NSF doesn't do basic research for SBIR and STTR. Yeah, they do basic research for a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's not what SBIR and STTR is about. They're about applied research. So real quickly, what's the difference between basic research and applied research? Basic research is research because it's cool. Basic research is research because science says it can't be done. Basic research is, there's not a lot of people that understand about this. I'm going to take this thing apart. Applied research is research because you want to make money. Applied research is research because you go, man, if I could only understand this, I could sell 1 million of these. I can create a product that's going to knock everybody's socks off. So that's the difference. And that's why for NSF, it is going to be that mix between research and sales document, because you have to be doing research that's going to lead to a product you can sell in the marketplace. But that marketplace can be whatever it needs to be, whether it's an end cap at Walmart, whether it's an acquisition by, Dell, whether it is you licensing the, technology out to Motorola to make better cell phones. Whatever that pathway is, however you're going to make money, however you're going to sell that product, there just has to be that viability there for it.
So again, to emphasize two-part process for submitting to NSF, because this is unique as SBIR, STTR goes. First step is this pitch. You got to submit a pitch. It has to be approved. It has to come back to you with an invitation to submit the second part, which is in your full phase 1 proposal. So you can't just shoot in a phase 1 proposal. You have to do the pitch, and the pitch has to be approved and lead to an invitation before you can submit the phase 1 proposal. So it's a little different for SBIR, STTR, a little awkward, but that's the process that NSF is using.
Yeah. And that pitch itself, again, is really just that kind of brief overview. It's, here's my best guess right now. You don't have to have the exact answers on your pitch, but you have to have a general idea of what it's going to require, what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, why it's going to matter. So the pitch is about a 3-page document. And the reason we say it's about a 3-page document is there's 4 sections. 2 of them are 500 words or less. 2 of them are 250 words or less. It's about 500 words per page, single space. So that's why that's roughly a 3-page document. Think of it like an abstract almost. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's why I'm going to do it. Here's what it's going to lead to. Here's why I know I can succeed. And NSF will typically respond to a project pitch within 3 weeks. Now, NSF is leaving a lot of the control up to their individual directorates and program managers. So we'll give you 2 kind of baselines here. One baseline is how it's supposed to work. So how it's supposed to work is NSF gets your project pitch, they review it, and they give you either one of 2 answers, accepted or rejected. If it's accepted, great. You start moving forward with your full proposal. If it's rejected, well, then you go back and you start, changing it, you start modifying it, and you wait till the next open submission window to submit that changed one. Now, in actuality, it's a little bit of a Wild West show at the moment. So, excuse me, NSF could be, or the NSF program managers who individually kind of respond to these, the person that responds to your program or to your project pitch is going to be that program officer that's ultimately going to be selecting the winners. That's going to be the one that says, okay, this is something that we should definitely fund. We got the review panel back. This looks good. I need this. I need that. They're going to be kind of that point of contact. And those program officers can respond to pitches in a multitude of different ways. They'll either accept it or they'll reject it, or they may even come back and say, I didn't really get this part. Can you please re-explain this? Or, this didn't seem like it is innovative. You have 500 words to change this and convince me. I've seen a bunch of different answers to project pitches and a bunch of different timelines on when they answer. just because, again, there's so many different program officers at NSF. What is it, Jim, like 30 something?
Don't know right now. I remember there were 12 and the number keeps changing and the people keep changing. So I don't know what the number is right now, but Dell makes a good point. They are quite different in how they treat this project pitch. My take on it is some of them thought this was a dumb idea to include this pitch, but they have to do it. So they just kind of rubber stamp your project pitch when it comes in. I had one client, they submitted it 5 p.m. one day. They had an invitation to submit by 8 a.m. the next day. Now, maybe the program officer stayed up all night working through their pitch and really carefully considering it. I'm guessing it got a cursory review on the subway on the way home that night. I've had other clients who literally were sitting there longer than 3 weeks. I had one up to 6 weeks waiting for the pitch. And when it came back, it was this, the response was longer than the pitch was. And it just went into gory detail. And here's all the things we think you haven't thought about. And here's what you need to be doing. And, just really raked them over the coals. So our point is not to poke fun at NSF. Our point is to tell you there is a variability in what kind of response you're going to get to this project pitch. You have to submit the pitch. It could be critically important what you put into it or not. You don't know, but the safe play is to do an excellent job on the pitch so that if it is a really critical, nitpicky program officer, it gets past them. And frankly, if it gets rubber stamped, you still get benefit out of it because, as Dell's going to show you, there's a lot of good information that you're going to have to put into the pitch that's going to serve you very well when you get to the full proposal.
And, Jim brought up a really great point there about, the one that somebody was waiting 6 weeks and then they got a kind of long diatribe about what they did. If you get feedback from the program officer on your pitch, if they actually write to you and say, this was great, you'll need to think about this, you want to do this, you want to focus on that, because ultimately they're going to be the ones selecting the winner, heed their advice.
Amen.
Actually write towards what they say. Really consider it. They put that information in there. They gave you that feedback because they think it's something that's fundable, but you have to address those questions. You have to address those points. If you don't address those points and questions, the likelihood of you being selected for an award going to go down a whole lot. So if you get that kind of feedback, really pay attention to it, really listen to it. They're not just giving you feedback just to say, oh yeah, this thing sucks, never, talk to me again. It's not like you got blocked on Tinder or something by them, but it is just that way that they're saying, this really sounds interesting. This sounds something I want to try and fund, but to get past the review panel, they're going to have to do this. They are giving you that feedback because they want to fund it. You have to answer that feedback to be fundable.
Yeah, this is God. NSF program officer is God. So you submit your pitch, God responds. What are you going to do? You're going to tell God they're full of manure and they don't know what they're talking about? Good luck with that one. Yeah. You're going to have to sit there and take to heart, what is God telling you? And if God is telling you you got some serious problems with your ideas, then you need to take that into account if you plan to work with NSF. The other thing that's nice is that God now has an email address when you get this response, and you can respond back and say, I appreciate your comments, but I'm not clear what you meant by, or could we deal with this issue by doing the following? And you kind of create a dialogue with God so that God's telling you, well, if you don't want to get struck by lightning, you better do this. And if you want to be in the land of milk and honey, you better do that. This is good stuff. It's helping you improve the pitch. It's also helping you prepare a much better proposal because once again, guess who picks the winners? Exactly what Dell told you. The program officer, God is going to pick this winner. So you're starting with God, you're going to end with God. You better stick with God and be pretty clear that the program officer / God is your success route in NSF. If you want to get crosswise with them, you're not going to have success.
And I think you bring up a really great point there, Jim, about having that email address is As Jim said, the program officer is God. You know what that email address does? Now you're the Pope. You've got God on speed dial. So you have that way to interact with them. You have that way to get back feedback. You don't have to interpret a burning bush or, whatever that story is. You have a way to communicate back with them. So if you don't understand anything about their feedback, if it's not clear, if it's not something where you go, okay, I know exactly what they're looking for, you don't have to just go, oh, well, guess I'll, try my best here. Ask them, ping them back. They open that channel of communication with you. Communicate back with them.
If people had asked us up front, when are you going to cover, and we said we were going to talk about God and the Pope, I bet they wouldn't have believed us. But we worked it into this webinar.
Well, and that's the great thing about our cohort is it wraps back around, but sometimes we get there through very weird vehicles. So again, just kind of with your pitch, if it's accepted, you have 1 year from that acceptance to submit the full proposal. So if it's accepted during a certain window, you don't have to turn right around and try and pull that proposal together. You have that year. Now, if it takes longer than a year, you're really going to have to, answer God and say, why did this take over a year? What went wrong? What's happening? Why didn't you get this to me? I was looking forward to this. Think about the disappointed mother that sits there when you come in late, kind of drunk from a party, and they go, oh, I didn't raise you like this. That's what that program officer is going to be like.
We've gone from the Pope to coming home drunk to our mother in the matter of 10 minutes here. We're covering a lot of territory here.
Well, we have good values.
Yeah, there you go.
So again, when your project pitch is being reviewed, don't start trying to create another one and submit it as well. Until you get resolution on it, you just kind of have to wait. You can't submit another pitch. You can't submit something on something different. And if it is, rejected, again, you have to wait till that next window to resubmit the changed one. So it's kind of a good idea if you're getting towards the end of the submission window and you're working on a project pitch, try and finish it up and try and get it in. Because the worst thing that can happen is you wait until that submission window rolls over, and then you finish it off, you send it off, and they reject it. Well, now you got another, 2.5 months you have to wait. So try and get those in towards the end of that submission window if it's something you're struggling with, because you'll get feedback, you'll get a review, you'll get their critique, they'll say where it's lacking, and now you know exactly how you have to tighten it up. It's a really great vehicle, at least, to get feedback by submitting right before the submission window closes, because it gives you that ability to change stuff, get it right back to them, and make it better, and know exactly where they think the failings are.
So Del, let's go to the dates on the current window so we can put this into the current context. June 4th, do I remember that right? For the end of the current window?
Here we go.
I know it's, yeah, okay. So
June 3rd.
June 3rd, I agree with Del, absolutely. What you want to do, your goal is to get this project pitch submitted on or before June 3rd. By the way, it's 5 p.m. your time, has to be in by 5 p.m. that day. And you'll then hear back early or not long after that, before the end of June. Hopefully it's a great idea, we love it, you're invited, please submit your full proposal. If the answer is no, we got some problems with your pitch, we think you need to, we don't know what you're doing over here, you need to address this over there, then you have the opportunity to revise and resubmit that pitch as soon as you can after you get the feedback. But if you submitted instead, you waited until June 4th and submitted this original pitch and it comes back rejected, what Dell is telling you, you got to sit out until the start of the next window, which is not until September 3rd. So you could submit a pitch on June 4th, and if it's rejected, have to wait until September 3rd to revise and resubmit. You've just added 3 months to your schedule of moving your company forward and moving this innovation forward. So really, you want to stencil on your forehead, June 3rd, 5 p.m. Mountain Time, got to get this project pitch in so that you get it in before the end of this window.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, Jim, is that think of that as your cutoff. Even though, you know, they're always open, they're always taking in submissions, they're always looking at them. You want to be smart about how you position that. You want to be smart about how you approach it. And the best way to be smart about that is, you know, set yourself up for success. As Jim said, if you wait until that June 4th and then they go, well, you know, I don't like this, or this doesn't seem interesting, or this is something that's not great, you're going to have to wait a long time before you can actually, you know, pull together another pitch and get that into them. And depending on their feedback, you might have to change a little, you might have to change a lot. Whereas if you got it in on June 3rd and you have to change a little, you can make those edits and get it right back to them and get an accepted pitch. Being able to get that feedback, get that review, get that critique, have them show you where the holes are, is one of the best things that you can do, because ultimately you're going to want to, again, wrap that information into what your proposal looks like. And when we say wrap that information in, as Jim hinted at earlier, so the 4 sections of your proposal or project pitch are the innovation, the technical objectives and challenges, the market opportunity, and the company and team. Remember, you're giving them a high-level overview about what am I doing, why is it unique, what do I need to address, what is that problem that is keeping me from going forward, what is that technical challenge that I have, and how am I going to do it? Who's going to do it? How am I going to, you know, pull this together? But why am I going to pull this together? What does this lead to? Why is this important for me? How am I going to sell this? Why is this even going to sell? That's the information you put in about the project pitch. Remember, it's your best guess at the moment. It's your best understanding. This doesn't have to be set in stone. But with what you're creating, as Jim hinted at earlier, there's really great foundational information in here, because NSF has, well, now it's 6 sections for their proposal description, essentially their 15-page technical narrative. You know what most of those sections cover? What's your innovation? Why is it unique? Why is it revolutionary? Why is it different? Who's going to buy it? Why are they going to buy it? How are you going to sell it? Why are you going to sell it? How do you think you have the people to get there? What's that level of expertise? What's that level of experience? And what are you going to do? Why are you going to do it? Why now during the phase 1? What does this set you up for in the future? Essentially those 5 W's and 1 H, that who, what, when, where, why, how. You're going to answer all of that in your, 15-page technical narrative. You know where you start? This foundational information in your project pitch. It's a way to continue to build off of the idea and know that you had validation at the beginning there. NSF was interested. They said, okay, I see why this is unique. I see what they're going to do, why they're going to do it. I see why this is a challenge. I see how they're going to go forward. And you're going to use that same information and build upon it in your technical narrative. You're going to take that information and go, okay, now I need to expand on this. Now I need to clarify. Now I need to provide some more information, because I'm not just convincing the program officer that they should give me a chance. Now I'm trying to convince a review panel that I need this money. This is why they should invest. This is why they should give me the money. Kind of real quick too, we didn't cover it, but I always like to tell people, because I cannot tell you how many times I've had this same conversation. So a phase 1 ceiling is $256,000. Do you know what your budget should try and be? $256,000. One of the things that people often get wrong about these programs, because they're used to being competitive in government grants. They're used to going, well, you know, the ceiling is $2 million. If I say I can do it for 1.8 million, that makes me more competitive because they're not spending as much money. You know, I can come in 200K less than, you know, Duke University down the road. So that's going to make it more interesting to them. That's going to make it more competitive. Do you know who your competition is in the SBIR and STTR programs? You're your own competition, because you're competing on showing them that you know what you're talking about. You're competing on engendering that level of confidence that they think you can do it. You're competing on the validity of the idea. You're not competing with the next small business who's doing something radically different. Every penny you leave on the table is a penny you could have gotten. I have actually seen feedback from NSF for one of our clients who their first whack of the budget, they were, you know, 60 grand under the ceiling. NSF came back and was like, you know, you can have 256,000, right? Why are you not trying to get 256,000? They're going to ask questions. They're going to say, well, if you can be so far under this, what aren't you doing that you could be doing? Why is your scope so small? Why can you do this for this cheap amount? You need to raise your scope. You need to do more. They want to give away the full amount. Capture the full amount.
Yeah, I've never seen a rejection that said we picked the cheaper alternative. We took the cheaper project. It's right up. Everyone is at 256 or 255, 993 if that makes you feel better. But you're right up against the top. And reviewers, the agencies, everyone else realizes $256,000 is not a lot of money to do what you're trying to do in phase, or what you should be trying to do in phase one. So if you're down at 185 or 212, they're wondering, how do you think you can do that? Do you don't have very good people? Do you don't have a very aggressive plan? Are you going to cut corners? You know, what's going on here? Are you just not really that good of a company? You don't know what you're doing in terms of your budgeting. So don't come in cheap. And if you want to be 39 cents under the maximum, that's fine. But also don't be 39 cents over the maximum. I did have one rejection. It was DOD, where they didn't admit it, but the proposal was rejected. And the only glaring thing that I saw in it was that they asked for literally 47 cents more than the maximum that the agency allowed. And it was real clear in the instructions, there was a maximum and they were 47 cents over it. And I think that probably led to a rejection. So maximum or a little bit less, but not a lot less, and certainly nothing over.
Yeah. And so now you probably got a lot of questions. You said NSF sounds great, but man, I don't know how to approach this. You know, Jim and Dell went back and forth and dialogued about a lot of stuff I didn't understand about NSF, or I never would have guessed, or this kind of seems hopeless. So you go, well, now I need some help. This is interesting. This is something I want to do, but man, it just seems overwhelming. Well, let's put on our superhero capes really fast. So
my tights just don't fit like they used to, Dale. I don't know about you. Middle age has made that much tougher. So.
Yeah, mine still fit, but man, there's a run up in it. So the other reason why we did this workshop, or quick webinar, was NSF can be difficult to approach. There's a lot of things that you need to know. There's a lot of ways that you need to approach them. There's a lot of kind of restrictions, a lot of forms you fill out. People often get lost and they go, I just can't get this. I can't understand this. So we created the Arrowhead Center SBIR and STTR Accelerator Program. We've been running this program for about 3 years now. We've actually had 8 cohorts. The NSF will be our 9th cohort, but it will be our 2nd NSF cohort, because we do generalized ones that just give an introduction, and then we do agency-specific ones. So in the ACSA, they're cohort-based because we want to build a community. We want you not to get stuck on the side of the highway with a flat tire and go, I can't just go forward. We want you to be able to progress and know that there's a path forward, and know that there are other people there with you who are going through the same struggles, going through the same issues. It is really great for people that have never applied to the programs before. It's really great for people that have never applied to an SBIR that's just say, I do not know how to get this. But it's also great for people that have applied, 5 or 10 times and keep getting rejected and go, I can't understand, why am I getting rejected? I don't know what these comments mean. I don't know what this feedback means. So we structured this program just so that it's a way for people to kind of work through stuff on their own, for people to kind of break stuff off into bite-sized chunks. The NSF cohort is a 12-week cohort. Each week, we kind of break down the proposal package or the proposal submission process into bite-sized chunks. So that way it's not just, we don't just hand you stuff and, say, okay, well, send us your proposal to review in 11 weeks and we hope it's good. No, we have weekly sessions. So weekly, there will be a virtual meeting where Jim and I will explain stuff about the proposal, about aspects of it, about, what is innovation, what's commercialization, how do you find that market data, how do you actually put together this bio sketch, what do you highlight, how do you make it seem like somebody has the experience and expertise they need, what does that budget look like? Why aren't you at $256,000? No, be at $256,000. All of that information we talked about that makes a strong proposal package, we actually go through in guided exercises, weekly sessions, and also, one-on-one meetings. So we'll meet with you one-on-one just to kind of discuss, okay, where are you at? Where are your holes? Where's your, biggest roadblock? Let's get over this, let's address this. Here's what you need to do to move forward. So the schedule for the cohort is we're actually accepting applications right now. Applications will close April 30th. There is a link to the application at least a link to the website that houses the application on the very last slide here. We will send out notifications on May 3rd that you've been accepted. If you are accepted, there is a mandatory project pitch workshop on May 12th because we want you to get started on the project pitch process. We want you to be able to get started on creating something. We want you to be able to potentially submit something again on that June 3rd so that you get that feedback, and can, submit another pitch if you're rejected. We want to be able to get you started so that, when you come into the cohort, which the first session will be June 9th, hopefully you already have an answer from NSF. Hopefully you have something that's ready to submit, or hopefully you have something that is almost there and you need just a little bit more help, just a little bit more guidance. It is 12 weeks, so it'll run until August 25th. And we run it that way because the last week we like to do submission sessions. So if you're ready to submit, if you have everything, I'll actually sit over your shoulder as you go through Fastlane and see all the weird errors that pop up in Fastlane because it's an archaic portal and it kind of sucks and it's confusing. So I'll sit over your shoulder live if that's something you want and watch as you submit it. And it closes. The window closes September 2nd. So that September 2nd deadline, we structure this that way that by that window, by that close, if you've worked through everything, if you've followed the instructions, if you've followed the assignments, if you've kind of done everything that we've been talking about, you have something that's ready for submission. You can go ahead and get it in and know that this window is closing. So for proposals, when they're submitted, the window closes are a little bit different than a project pitch because those windows are when it's going to be reviewed. So when that window closes September 2nd, September 3rd, well, probably not September 3rd, but they'll gather all of the proposals from that window, from that quarterly window, and they'll start putting together review panels. They'll start putting together the reviewers. They'll actually start kind of farming those out and go, okay, well, we need a review panel on this kind of topic. We need a review panel on this type of science. We need a review panel on this type of commercialization. And you'll know that if you got it in by September 2nd, 5 p.m. local, that you are going to get reviewed. Otherwise, if you wait for that window to roll over and you try and submit it on September 3rd, it's just going to extend the time period before you get reviewed, before you know ultimately if NSF is going to want to fund this. And as Jim just talked about earlier, your full submission is very similar in that project pitch, and that you're just going to be kind of waiting around and it's going to be kind of stuck in limbo. You don't know if it was something that you need to address reviewer comments and resend this back to NSF. It's not something that you know that, okay, well, this is the holes, these are the gaps, this is why I need to, restructure this. You're just kind of in limbo and you can't move forward. So that's why we've structured this course to do this. Now, the course is totally free. You just have to, submit an application. And then again, you have to attend that workshop, the project pitch working workshop. That's a mouthful, but that way that we can get you started, we can provide you some guidance, we can provide you some assistance. And this is just kind of an overview. So as you can see, each week we break it down into something that you can work on that week, something that your next steps, something that your action items to pull this proposal together. If you've never pulled a proposal together, if this is your first time doing it, on average, you can usually expect to sink 100 to 120 hours into that development. Wouldn't it be better to break down that 120 hours into 10 hours each week for 12 weeks? That way you're just not starting to work on this 4 days before the window closes or before your project pitch expires and going, oh God, how do I get this information together? So that's really just what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to break down the proposal creation process into something that's not going to overwhelm people, something that's easy to follow, easy to understand. And again, something that we can actually at the end of this say, okay, we provided you the best assistance. You listened to us, you took our feedback, you took our critique. This actually has a really good shot of winning. I would love to be able to say that it would guarantee a win, but we can't guarantee anything. But at least we know that you answered the criteria, you put together a strong proposal. There's got to be a really good reason why they're not going to fund this. There has to be something they just didn't understand. There has to be something that they just went, no, I don't know, this needs to be tightened up. So by going through the cohort, our objective is that you know exactly where those holes are. If it comes back to it and you're rejected, or if you're accepted, that you have a pathway for making a commercial product. You have a pathway for making something that somebody wants, something that's revolutionary, and ultimately something that's going to set the world on fire.
And NSF is one of the SBIR agencies, one of few SBIR agencies that does allow resubmission. So you do get this original proposal in, and for some reason it doesn't resonate, you'll get pretty good feedback from NSF's reviewers about what they liked and disliked, and you can resubmit. So it's not a one shot and that's all you get. You get an opportunity to resubmission if you want to.
And one of the questions people probably have is, well, this sounds interesting, but what do I actually get? So you get me and Jim's time and kind of expertise. Jim's expertise, my best guesses. You get full proposal support, everywhere from registration to submission. You get our tools and resources, our templates, our compliance documentation, access to our videos, record each of the sessions so that you can go back and rewatch it and say, well, I didn't really understand this part, or here is something that I needed to do. I've actually heard from cohort members that said they've watched and rewatched videos because there was something that they were working on, and it was great to have it in one screen next to them while they were typing, just so they understood exactly how they should approach that section of their proposal package. And you also get inclusion into the Arrowhead System Support Network. So Arrowhead Center is the entrepreneurial development arm of New Mexico State University. It is where the NMFAS program is housed, which is me. I'm part of the NMFAS team. And you get a lot more development assistance. So by being part of the Arrowhead network, you can get enterprise advisor meetings where we have specialists available that you can talk to. You can set up a one-on-one meeting with them. You can schedule an hour to talk to them about things like patents or budgetary concerns or finance or whatever it is that you need to set up your business. Or we also have sprint programs that focus on marketing, customer discovery, all key information for an SBIR proposal package, or even things like prototyping assistance. We offer all that because we're part of New Mexico State University, and at least FAST, we're funded by the SBA to do exactly this, to help small businesses across New Mexico go after these opportunities, to help them understand it, to provide them assistance, to provide them guidance. And we do it through a lot of online communications. So this isn't something we're just starting. We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out how to do this, how to work online. All of our tools and resources are online, all of our videos. We have a YouTube library with over 200 videos of me just kind of waxing poetic and boring all of y'all to death. But everything we have is really based around how do we get the information that people need and the information into their hands and the quickest way to digest it. So very similar to what we're doing here under the ACSA program, is just trying to help you move forward, trying to make sure you understand NSF and the NSF process, and you understand what's required to kind of submit that proposal package that's going to gain that reviewer interest. Because at the heart of it, it's all about gaining their interest and getting past that barrier. And how do you do that? Well, you follow the directions, you follow their criteria, you answer all of their questions, you answer all of their calls, and calls for information, not personal calls. That is one thing about these proposals, is you're putting your heart and soul into the proposal. You're making sure you address all of their points. You're making sure you're writing towards their criteria. You're making sure you use the language they use so that they can pull it out. Because you don't get the opportunity to, give them a call and say, no, you didn't understand that part. Let me re-explain that. Or no, that graphic is bad. Let me talk about why it's important, what matters. You have to put everything into the proposal, that convincing argumentation into that proposal, because that's your shot, that's your opportunity. And if you didn't do a great job at it, as Jim said, you can resubmit. They'll give you back, they'll give you feedback. They'll tell you where the holes were. They'll tell you what you need to fix. But you can't just be on a treadmill there trying to, incrementally improve it and not really know what you're doing, why you're improving that section, or why that matters. Instead of that, why not go through our cohort? We'll cover that information. So here is the link to the cohort website. Again, we're taking applications now. They will close on April 30th. And we would really love it if each of you apply. It's something that we want to do, something that we want people to succeed, and something that, at least personally, I don't know about Jim, I love doing it. So.
Absolutely. This is something we've been involved in for a long time. We believe in the program. We believe in small business. And we also realize there can be hurdles for newcomers to get into SBIR, STTR. And our job is to help reduce those hurdles, and also to be supportive of you, but also you should realize that Dell and I are not going to just pat you on the back and be cheerleaders for you. We're going to challenge you. We're going to suggest areas of your proposal we think need strengthening. We're going to maybe be devil's advocate at time. But I think you'll find value in that, because it's a heck of a lot heck of a lot better to get that friendly fire from us and be able to make corrections before you submit the proposal than shoot in a proposal and then get shot down by the agency themselves.
You know, one of the questions people probably are sitting there going through is, well, you're an academic. Why should I listen to you? So yes, I work for a university right now. I work on this program. I've worked on the program for pretty close to 5 years now, trying to help small businesses go after these opportunities. But before that, you know what I was? I was part of a small business going after these opportunities. So I've been in your shoes. I've sat there going, I do not understand these instructions, or why won't this work? Or what is it about this budget that's just completely fallen apart? I've walked that pathway. I kind of know how just much of a struggle it can be to get this information, and how kind of lacking a lot of the tools and resources are that are out there for what do I do? What do I create? How do I go forward? And Jim has a long history with the SBIR and STTR programs, and in particular, NSF itself. As he mentioned before, Jim is an NSF reviewer. How long have you been reviewing NSF proposals, Jim?
Oh, wow. I should count, but off and on, probably 15 years.
So he has seen a lot of these come through. He has helped a lot of people. So you get that experience, that expertise, and that knowledge about what would we have done differently? Why would we have changed this? What do we think makes this stronger? As Jim said, the feedback we're going to give, sometimes it may seem harsh, but that's because we've seen others fail where we want you to succeed. So that's why you should apply to this program, and that's why I hope everybody does. So I hope this session was informative, that it at least showed you the pathway forward with NSF, what they look for, what's important to them, what to focus on, and why, what we do here under our ACSA program might be of, value and interest to you. So thank you all for attending and for watching, and thank you all for hopefully applying to the program, and hopefully I see applications from each and every one of you.